Good afternoon, viewers and listeners. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Free Marketeers. I hope you're all doing okay in lockdown, getting ready for the freedoms that come with level 3. I'm sure all of you have placed your online orders for alcohol, so I'm sure those stores are very happy with the business that's coming for them very soon. So some good news for some of us to look forward to in the next few weeks. For this episode, I'm joined by James Urdang. He is the CEO of Education Africa. James, thank you very much for being here with me.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be with you. And I'm one fan of the Free Market Foundation, so you're speaking to the right person.
Mutual fans here, so we're going to talk each other up. I'm hoping the viewers won't get too bored. James, I thought just as a start, a bit of your background, maybe, you can speak specifically about your organization, your background there, but you can also speak maybe in general to how you got involved in the education space in South Africa. I know for many of the viewers and for me as well, it's an interest, I used to in a former life, I like to say, because I'm so young, I've had so much experience, but I used to be an au pair and all that sort of stuff. So, in the education sphere in South Africa, people are interested in how it's all going to shake out. And especially now with COVID-19, a lot of challenges going forward. But if you could give us a sort of overview to begin with.
Okay, well, if we go back to the early 70s, late 60s, I'm actually dyslexic and ADHD. And so I know how difficult it is to get an education. Of my first year of schooling, I couldn't read or write, and they just started in 1967, Crossroads, and I went there in 1971. Mm-hmm. And it was in a little house in Parktown, and people looked at there's something wrong with you if you're dyslexic or ADHD. It's very different today. Mm. So, but I was taught a number of ways how to read, which was not the conventional way. And I've used that in developing programs for Education Africa, which are really unique and been fantastic for our learners, etc. And a lot of colorful materials and fun materials and that sort of thing. But to just go a step forward, our family was quite liberally brought up, etc. So we knew the other side of South Africa, and so we learned a lot. We knew about the ANC. We knew about a whole lot of things that most South Africans didn't know, not because they didn't want to know, because of the media was closed and censored. So we knew about that side. And I always used to say that one day I'm going to be rich and I'm going to build a school. Well, let me tell you something. I haven't got no money, really. I'm not rich, but I've built schools and I've created educational programs, and it's really been a fantastic journey of 3 decades. Back in 1989, I started with the vision of Education Africa. I then met the late Dr. Agri Cluster, who was our first chair. Agri was unbelievable, but he taught me something right at the beginning, was to not reinvent the wheel, use the expertise that are around. And I would say that is the best advice I've ever got in my life. I can tell you that now, because we use that at Education Africa all the time. And it's about employing the right people, going out and getting the right help with those expert things. And I've got the confidence to do that. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle, is that they want to do things themselves all the time, rather than saying there are the experts out there, and go out and use that expertise and you'll do well. And it's often a lot cheaper than as well running a business that way.
I think I think what you point to is something very important, especially going forward for society and people in general, utilizing each other's strengths, not just thinking that one person has to take everything on, but seeing a bit from this person, a bit from that person, and bringing it all together. I suppose that's a nice way of talking about South Africa as well. We like to talk a lot about the diversity of the country, but it doesn't mean much if we don't actually allow each other to play to our strengths, if we don't allow people to bloom in that way. I know that's maybe, pun intended, flowery language, but it's meaningful if you give people different things to work on and different people in a team to come together and work towards a certain project.
I like what you're saying about a team, and I think that's important. That's what I always say. Everyone's part of the team, and you all play a role. You might play different roles. Sometimes I like to say that everyone within Education Africa is part of that team or part of that puzzle, because if you've got a donor on the ground, might they be local or overseas, they're as important in that puzzle than even myself. Because without their support, how do we implement our programs? So I think you've got to learn to work as a team. You've got to learn also where does your expertise lie as an individual, and have the confidence in yourself to be able to use other people's expertise rather than trying to cover up and not implement, etc.
James, building on that idea of the team, where does your team work in South Africa? Are you guys mostly focused in Johannesburg, or are you in other provinces? What sort of communities do you guys focus on? Where do you apply, I guess, the skills and the tools that you have?
Okay, so we're a national organization and we also global. And so we've got charities, so we can get donations in the UK, USA, Germany, Austria. So that's where the majority of our income comes from. We also get income locally. And then our projects, we based in Sandton, and we've got through the kindness of Growth Point, they sponsor our offices. We've got very beautiful offices, which we can really thank Growth Point for. And our projects are spread across the country, mainly in Hattingh, obviously. And we work throughout the country. Our biggest program, in fact, the South African Model United Nations, which is funding dependent, it's been on hold for the last 2 years because of funding challenges that we face. And I think that's going to get even harder now because of COVID-19 and the pandemic, etc. But that's been in over 600 schools, and it's been a great partnership with the UN in Pretoria, government, Rob Island Museum, and we've created a lot of leaders through that program, young leaders who we see blossom today. Then we've got our early childhood development train the trainer program, where we've got 5 training centres, one based in Project Glen out of the Boys and Girls Club there, another 4 at the Africa Tikkun centres where we do our training in Braamfontein, Alexander, Diepsloot and Orange Farm. So that's quite well spread. Our Marimba program is, we got 16 what we call Marimba hubs, and we normally have over 1,000 kids a week in the program. Obviously, that has been put on hold, but it stretches as far as Hammanskraal, where we've got the only fully deaf Marimba band in the world. We've trained.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and we're in the Northern Cape, and we're using this time to scale into the Western Cape for next year opening as well. We've got a school in Orange Farm.
I have to interrupt there. Sorry. Speaking of the Capes, any mention of the Eastern Cape?
So in 2022, we want to start our Marimba hubs in the Eastern Cape. We have worked with Aquavista school in East London, where we've done Marimba tours with them. And so we do have our expansion goals there as well.
No, my personal agenda there is I went to Rhodes, so I'm always keen to hear more things about the Eastern Cape and try and think about ways of getting involved there. The Eastern Cape lies close to my heart. But no, I'm glad to hear the reach is so widespread. Sorry, go ahead.
As I say, through our Model UN program, the reach is quite evenly spread throughout the country, if it's the Eastern Cape or if it's Gauteng or the Northern Cape. So we've worked in all these areas, and yeah, I enjoy it.
A bit of a broad question here, and you tell me if we should focus on one aspect. But just I was wondering if I could get your take maybe on education broadly and the way that education has been approached in South Africa, maybe the last 10 years, the last 20 years, and where you think maybe it falls short, where you think it's strong, where you think you guys especially augment that sort of thing. If you can speak to that at all.
Okay, so basically, as myself, I always say I'm not an expert, but I've learned a lot and I've got my personal views and I'm happy to share those with you. Look, we've come a long way from apartheid, and there are a lot of kids of colour that are in the old government schools, which are your Model C schools today. So that's positive. But I think the problem in education in this country is that there needs to be a political decision to change it. And I don't think anyone's made that political decision, because you've got SATU, which is extremely strong teacher union, and often you have a strong teacher union or any union when the workforce is lacking in skills.
Right.
And they're not lacking in skills because of themselves. It's a legacy of apartheid. So government needs to actually take some sort of political decision to actually break up and give real opportunity to our students, because a lot of our students and learners are being taught by teachers that aren't really that well qualified, and specifically qualified in the empowerment subjects of maths, science, economics, and these sort of things. Because of the legacy of apartheid, you weren't allowed to teach those. So I don't see there's much change. We're still at the bottom of the rankings when we look at things. If you look at, I always like to round numbers off, but if you look at what we've got, about 1.2, 1.3 million kids entering the school system every year. And they say they've got a, 70 plus pass rate, which I'm very skeptical on that.
Very touch and go.
I think the real pass rate's more in the lower 20s. And the reason why I say that is that before you get to grade 12, half the kids have basically dropped out of school. And then if you're looking at a usable matric, grade 12, you're looking at what are the students in empowerment subjects of maths and science. How many of those are passing at, let's say, at a 60% that you can really use at a tertiary level? So you would then look at about 30,000 students throughout the country. It's scary. 30,000, that's it. And they're not all going to go in that direction. And that includes the legacy of the white kids.
Yeah, no, I agree. Sorry, I was going to mention maybe this obsession or this focus on tertiary education, and you have to get your matric and you have to go to university and all these things. And I wonder if that view, while it might bring a lot of value for some, and while some might really take to it, I wonder if that exclusive focus on that hasn't led to a lot of students being left behind. And if the resources aren't there for them, then they're simply not catered for.
Mind boggles to me. The mind really boggles. This came under Kader Asmal. Kader Asmal brought in the TVET colleges into the tertiary, and everything was about getting academic education.
So the TVET colleges, those are more like vocational, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And now they've been merged with the universities and that. And it's come a bad word in South Africa to get a technical education. Hey, I mean, there's a lot of technical things that you can do, plumbing and whatever it might be, that you'll earn more than you could with an education. You could actually even grow our economy rather than another BA student or another student failing at university, which costs a lot of money every time someone fails. Yeah.
Someone who's a plumber can make a lot more money and provide a lot more value than I can with my philosophy degree.
Correct. So I just think that we should have had like 2/3 of our students going through some sort of technical vocational training, and then a third really pushing on the academic side. And that thing could have been sieved out by grade 7 or 9 with which direction a student's going to take. And that would have made a huge impact, a positive impact on job creation. I mean, even if you look at our townships and rural areas and informal settlements, there's a lot of people in there who can build, who can do plumbing, who can do electrical, who would love to pursue a career in that, but because of the education system, it hasn't allowed them to actually get qualified.
I think we, maybe the last few years, and of course that we know the previous decade, the massive looting and corruption that happened, and a lot of focus is on the Zondo Commission and this thing and that thing. And of course we should try and nail corruption as much as possible and not provide incentives for corruption to happen. But I worry that we're forgetting to talk about stuff on the ground, the grassroots work that could be done, especially in terms of education. It's not this massive, revolutionary thing that needs to happen. For me, it's quite common sense to think that you allow parents and children to actually, for the children to pursue different paths. it's for me deeply embedded in the idea of individual agency and individual freedom.
No, absolutely. And going back to state capture and the corruption and the looting, etc., it breaks my heart. It really does. I mean, I was fortunate enough in a unique position as a young white South African, where I was actually mentored by the late Walter Sisulu.
Wow.
From 91 till his passing, and got an opportunity to do a lot of things with President Mandela and bringing different political parties together pre-94 for the lifting of sanctions and investments. And in fact, if you go to our Education Africa YouTube channel, there's a wonderful video on there called No Easy Walk to Freedom, which brings business and political things together on one platform. And just from Walter and what he taught me and everything, one of the things that he would be turning today is to know of this corruption and looting. I mean, I'm no economist, but one thing I do know, I do a lot of listening. And our economy should have been at least 25% bigger. And if our economy was 25% bigger, we not only would have huge we would have made huge strides in job creation, etc. And our middle class would have grown, not to 7 million, from 1 million to 7 million, but we should have been sitting on 15, 20 million.
No, precisely. We talk about the buzzword of radical economic transformation, but we could have had much more radical economic transformation if we followed the right policies.
Correct. And I see ourselves even now with this COVID pandemic, people are going to die of COVID because of this. Why? Because if we had grown the economy, and what would have happened is that most South Africans, or let's say very few South Africans, wouldn't be living in a home. They would have access to electricity, they'll have access to water to wash their hands, and they'll have the basic human rights, which they denied under our present government. And it just kills me, that sort of thing. And then you look at this harsh lockdown. I'm no medical expert, I'm no business expert, but I just feel that there could have been a different way of doing things, because at the end of the day, we are not a first world country, but we've taken this first world solution and dumped it on a third world developing country.
I like to think of it as a very bourgeois solution.
Correct. And so, I mean, it could have just been done so much. Yes, people are going to die. But 12,000 people die of influenza in South Africa every year. When people were dying of AIDS, no one seemed to mention anything, even if it was over 600 at one stage.
We just got used to it.
Yeah, correct. And loss of one life is too many, so I'm not going on that. But I think what I'm seeing now is that there'll be 20, 30 times more people dying of poverty than of COVID-19 in the coming years.
Yeah. No, I agree completely.
And it's just, it boggles me.
James, I wanted to ask, in light of the lockdown and COVID-19, and of course we all read about the effect of the lockdown on companies' bottom lines, that sort of thing. I think some of us are well versed in that sort of thing, but I wanted to ask you specifically on how do you think education might look in a year or 5 years or 10 years? I don't want to put you on the spot in terms of forecasting, but just your sort of gut feeling, how do you think it might shake out? Is it all just going to be online? Is that too easy an answer? What do you think?
Well, I'm going to talk from Education Africa's perspective. But first of all, I really don't think that online is going to replace a teacher. What technology is going to do is assist teachers to be better teachers. And I think if teachers could see that, then I think we're going to go places. I think a lot of teachers, and I think the unions maybe to a certain extent, are putting a bit of scare tactics into teachers to say that technology is going to replace them. I really don't think that's going to happen, especially if you want to do it properly. Technology should be there to enhance the teaching experience and learning experience so you get better results. But one thing with us as an organization is that because we're entrepreneurial, is that we've used these last 8 weeks to innovate. We could have closed our doors and sat at home and said, what's next?
No, of course.
And we haven't. Our early childhood development program, we've already produced, we're teaching again, even though our centres are closed. We've produced a blended teaching and learning approach where we still give our students their materials and we distribute the materials with food hampers. We give them journals so they can then document everything, which we then collect when we drop the next food hamper and the next material, so we can then still create their files, make sure they do their notational hours for accreditation. Then our trainers, they do training by Google Meets in groups of 8 of our students. They then can give them classroom video support materials, podcast directions, and CELC's been kind enough to give all 127 of our students 10 gigs of data per month for the next 6 months. So well done and full marks to CELC for coming through so quickly. And that data is going to be delivered to all of them in these 5 centres on Thursday. So yeah, you've got to use this for innovation. Our marimbas, if you look at it, yes, our centres are closed, but how do we keep our 26 teachers in these centres skilled and keep them interested? We've come up with a whole lot of ways how to teach and even upskill them through things on WhatsApp teaching. It's amazing to see what you can do with technology.
Oh, that's awesome. I think there are so many tools that we might take for granted every day, but as you're pointing out now, and I'm sure you have more to say, I'm interrupting you, but there's so much we can use. I think we get mired in the harshness of the lockdown. Not that we shouldn't take stock of where we are, but maybe this seems to be a uniquely South African trait that we, even in the harshest of times, we still try and find ways of adaptability and innovation.
Correct. And even though over 1,000 of children go through the program on a weekly basis, at least we're keeping those teachers upskilled, so when we do open those centres, they can carry on. But we also run the biggest marimba and steel pan festival in the world with over 2,000 musicians participating. So yes, we've had to put it on hold. But what have we done? Next week, we launch our international virtual marimba and steel pan festival. And instead of saying it's a replacement to the other festival for this year, or stand-in, because we've got to do something, no. It's going to come an annual event. And we've developed it into annual. So we'll have our virtual festival and we'll have our actual festival where people participate against each other in one venue. So
that's brilliant to hear. I mean, part of my and the FMF's podcast that we've been doing in the lockdown is talking to people in different sectors in terms of innovations and solutions. How do we adapt to the current climate? And to hear what you're talking about, I think is very gratifying to hear for me personally. I'm hoping it is for the viewers and listeners as well.
One of the things that we want to do as Education Africa is to look at really scaling onto the continent. And some years ago, we have done some programs there and we failed. And why did we fail? We did a strategy session with Deloitte because we were doing the teaching. We've got to empower those communities and those countries to do their own teaching. And we're going to do that through social franchising. And it's very similar to commercial franchise, except that it's more of a franchise that is supported through not making money, so donations, etc., but still making sure that we keep to a very high level of teaching through the different centres that we empower. So that we're working on that now during the lockdown. So we're saying, okay, well, let's give ourselves more work. And I find that we're busier than ever. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, I'm at home, we should be having a holiday here. But that ain't happening.
No, I think that's very good to hear. No idle, what is it? What is that expression? Idle hands make for the devil's work, isn't it?
Yeah, correct.
Oh, no, I think that's brilliant, James. I think that makes me very excited for at least some aspects in education in Africa going forward. I think just in terms of sort of wrapping up, I mean, I would like you to talk about how people can support your work and get involved in that sort of thing. But also, if you wanted to give any parting thoughts, any things for people to chew over, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I'd love people to go onto our website and make a donation. Our web address is www.educationafrica.org. We do wonderful work. In fact, I've also got a personal website giving my background, and that can be found at www.jamesurdang.net, and that's JAMESURDANG.net. And yeah, without the kindness of others, we just can't do the work we do. And it's come a lot more difficult in the last couple of weeks. We've already got letters from some donors saying we're redirecting funds to COVID-19, which really scares me. Yes, it needs to be done. But if there's going to be a clean out of the non-profit sector over this time period, who's going to be training our ECD teachers? Who's going to be giving activities to our children? Who's going to be creating some other sorts of innovation, reaching communities that aren't reached? That the non-profit sector does. And if they're going to be cleaned out, then we've really got even bigger problems going forward as a country and a continent.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. And thanks for giving those links. I will link to them below the video as well. To you viewers and to the listeners, if you found value in this episode, please consider supporting Education Africa. As James mentioned, they need your support, and the work that they do is crucial, especially going forward. Let's not assume that once the lockdown is over, once the number of COVID-19 cases goes down, that the problems are going to be solved. We need to lay the groundwork now. We need to do the work now to make sure that South Africa comes out of this in the best possible way. But yeah, I think on that note, James, I want to thank you very much for joining me. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm sure the viewers and the listeners have as well. To all of those of you watching and listening, please remember to like the video, please share it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Please share this video on your different social media platforms. And from the FMF, if you found value in the work we've done during the lockdown, please consider donating to our organization and supporting the work we do. We're trying to fight back against the irrational, bizarre, and draconian regulations as best as we can, and we'll continue to do so for as long as the lockdown lasts. But on that note, I will end there. Thank you for your time once again, and we will talk to you again on the next episode. But for now, keep well. Bye.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.